Webcam microphone up close.
Webcam microphone up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
See, but I have the files. You know, I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? You know, days and the fondle slab of choice. I don't know what that was. Doesn't really matter. Internet, professional run and not just Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from as long as it's real. It's hard to get real information because seriously, they don't want you to have just read two sources whenever I try to prove out. You know, it's not. If you expect your government to tell you the truth, you're going to sadly disappoint another one of these things.
Dear Lord, what a dirty old man, huh?
Really? Can't be serious. Is this really how you want things to be? Come on. More hooker, eruptions? Eruptions, whatever.
Like Dave Powers kind of...
Really?
Allegedly broadcast live from Pima Region 2, within the borders of the formerly united and currently occupied states of America. We bring you the Ochelli Effect.
I damn sure know I'm an original. We have all these situations. I'd love to know why it takes 50 years, for
that.
For a 19-year-old girl to eventually get up to gumption to put these things out.
Well, it's Saturday night and I'm still live. This is the Ochelli Effect. I'm Chuck Ochelli on UCY.TV radio. Okay, we're going to go into a couple of different directions tonight. We're going to try and structure 1 hour one way and 1 hour another way and see how it goes. I'm going to bring in Dylan very, very shortly, who is a young man who does a YouTube channel called The Truth Speaks. Does very interesting things on a lot of different topics, including Fukushima, a show he did about JFK, or actually specifically Lee Harvey Oswald with me. He did stuff about the New World Order, the evolution of, morality, a few other subjects, and Dylan is definitely working his thing out, so I like to try and help him along with that. And tonight, actually, he wanted to discuss Dealey Plaza with me, which we're going to do briefly, and then we're going to get into some other areas depending on what shakes out. So let's see. And by the way, I just about dropped my call when I was coming in. I was listening to my own intro and lost the audio. So, I'm going to apologize in advance if I have technical difficulties once again. But, this is the way things go. By the way, also, only one negative message did I receive about the Jack Blood discussion. I was surprised. I thought that he would definitely evoke a little more than that. But, hey, it seems as though there wasn't too many problems at all with what I had to discuss with Jack. And I guess it was, general enough that we didn't really piss anybody off too badly. But, hey, I'll apologize for that again, because it's usually my goal to aggravate somebody with my show. But, hey, it's all right. Maybe Jack got all the hate mail. I got to check with him later. All right, let's see now if we can bring Dylan in. So, looks like I am. Looks like he might be there. Dylan, you with me?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right.
Hold on, let me start the stream real quick.
Sure. We're going to stream this also, like I said, to The Truth Speaks, which you can find on YouTube. And like I said, there's been other shows that I've done with Dylan. He's also had a bunch of other people on, all different discussions. 9/11, of course, the JFK assassination, like I said, Lee Harvey Oswald, the New World Order in general. A few other topics, too. I don't know all of what Dylan has done, actually, but I do know that he's working on it, and like I said, it's always good to encourage the younger ones among us a little bit, I think. So,
my stream is up. I'm just putting the link around.
All right, that's great. So, here's the thing. Like I said before, you wanted to discuss Dealey Plaza. So, we'll go into that for a little bit. In the second hour, we might get into some other stuff. Very, very different from the JFK topic, but let's just see how this goes for now. Okay. Now, Dealey Plaza and the JFK assassination, I know, I'd go on and on about this a lot, but I really have tried to not do too many shows where, I base the whole thing on it. Dealey Plaza is the little area that we're all used to seeing, and in fact, if anybody wants to, they can get some pretty good looks at it from how it appeared in 1963. More specifically in 1964, if you check out the Secret Service / local television station reenactment film, which I put up on my Daily Motion page, you can find that under Blind JFK Researcher on Daily Motion. And you can see an aerial view, you can see a map of Dealey Plaza, you can see the motorcade route, the way it was laid out, and all this stuff is of interest. Also, the footage that they took from a car, which they ran the motorcade route down so that you could see sort of the perspective that the passengers of the presidential limousine would have seen. And that's an interesting piece of film. Of course, it altogether hangs the whole thing on Oswald and shows Secret Service agents reenacting Oswald's supposed escape and all that kind of good stuff. They utilize a car which is not the right car at all. It doesn't even fit the dimensions. However, Dealey Plaza today has been altered quite a bit. They tried to preserve it for some time, but previous to in the 1 or 2 years leading up to the 50th anniversary, they actually changed some of the landscape, supposedly restoring some of it. They've altered some things there, but if you wanted to get a good look at what it did look like in 1964, which was only it was less than a year after the assassination, obviously because the assassination occurred on November 22nd, 63, there wasn't much time in between 63 and 64 there, but yeah, so you can see that. They also utilized part of a piece of footage which was taken by the FBI, which was originally a silent piece of footage. I have that as well, but I never posted it on YouTube or anything, where they just show you the motorcade route. And I think that was recently used on the History Channel's Declassified Kennedy or whatever Oswald did it mockumentary they were running at the time. But this stuff is all of interest because, like I said, it does show you what the landscape was like and everything else. So this is this little area. It's a park-like area, and it's named after the Dealey family, who are interesting historical figures in Dallas, and you can look them up if you want. Find out what they owned and what they founded and all that kind of good stuff, and just like most other towns. So Dealey Plaza is where the motorcade route, which led from Main Street to Houston, straight down Main Street after leaving Love Field, because of course he was in Fort Worth earlier in the day. He leaves Love Field in Dallas, ends up on Main Street after going through Turtle Creek and a couple other areas. It's really a short drive to the Trade Mart where he was supposed to attend a luncheon. And you can see footage of that stuff on CBS and all that because they had cameras sitting there at the time of the shooting. You go down Main Street, you make a right onto Houston, and then another quick left onto Elm Street. And Elm Street is where no one disputes this is where the shooting occurred. And that's why I've referred to it many times as the original Nightmare on Elm Street, because this is, I believe, where Wes Craven may have gotten the inspiration for his title there. But anyway, now, your questions, Dylan, regarding this, or should I just keep going on?
You can keep going on. Typically, you answer my questions with what you say in the end. But a specific thing I want to get into about Dealey Plaza, or if you want to save this for another show, the witnesses.
The witnesses. Well, Which witnesses are we talking about? I mean, there are many in Dealey Plaza. A lot of people don't think that there are, but there's actually a couple hundred people who had a vantage point on this, one way or another. A lot of them were very confused. If you're talking about the people that were actually witnesses to the shooting, there is a good potential, say, 200 people at least that could have put their eyes on it.
Well, let's go with the main one, the one that the Warren Commission always uses, the nearsighted one.
Oh, Howard Brennan. Okay.
Do you want to go into him on another show, or?
No, we can cover him in brief. This right here points to, because we're about to get to the 50th anniversary, actually, of the Warren Commission release, which was in September of 1964, and the star witness for the Warren Commission was a man named Howard Brennan. Now, what is interesting about that is he's standing on the corner. If you can envision the Zapruder film for yourself for a moment, there's sort of a brickwork wall which is circular, which is on an opposite corner from where Zapruder's vantage point is, and you can see people milling around. It's on the corner there after the car makes its turn, and it's sort of in the background and disappears as the limousine makes its way toward the Stemmons Freeway sign, where you lose sight of Kennedy and Connolly for a few moments, and Kennedy emerges from the sign with his hands up toward his throat. He's not grasping his throat, but he does have his hands up there, and he's leaning forward, obviously in pain, already after emerging from behind that sign. But that wall that you see there is a gentleman who is near that wall who ends up being the star witness, and that's Howard Brennan. I can't recall exactly what he was wearing off the top of my head, but here's the fascinating part about Brennan. When the Dallas police broadcast a description of Oswald, about... Now, this depends on whose timeline you believe, because it is very difficult to sync up the time from the Dictabelt recordings on the Dallas police broadcasts, because they are voice actuated, so if there's no traffic or just static, there's nothing being recorded, so they're not in real time. This has been one of the problems regarding handling the audio evidence in the Kennedy assassination, because on another show I'll get into the stuck microphone and the fact that in my opinion the shots were most likely recorded on audio, however badly, and BBN did the analysis on that for the House Select Committee in the 70s. But anyway, the broadcast goes out giving a description which includes Oswald's height, Oswald's weight, Oswald's hair color, what he was wearing, all this stuff. Now, the Dallas police claim and the Warren Commission claims that the source for that was Howard Brennan, who is standing on the ground, okay, in Dealey Plaza. Now, if you believe that Oswald was in the 6th floor of the School Book Depository building, Brennan is across the street, which is a 3-lane street, okay? He's across the street and 6 floors down, okay? Now, not only this, but Okay, I think we're back on.
Alright,
Alright, so,
We should be
I
good.
have no idea why that happened, but I was explaining about Howard Brennan and how he was able, supposedly, according to the Dallas Police and to the Warren Commission, to make an identification from ground level looking up at the 6th floor window, which, like I said, according to photographic evidence, is not even fully open. So we have a half-closed window. We have a guy either standing or crouching in it, if you believe the official story, and he's able to identify his hair, his height, his weight, all of these interesting aspects from 6 floors down. And in addition to this, it turns out that Howard Brennan was nearsighted. He was a welder who was nearsighted, and if you take a look at the photographic evidence on Brennan, you'll find that he was not wearing his prescription glasses that day. So an amazing sort of, skill this gentleman has without his glasses and without his ability to see at a distance. He's able to identify Oswald in this way. So there's an interesting witness for you. But that's Howard Brennan. And, again, the star witness, and people in the JFK assassination community have often joked, because we're very, very glad that that his book was published posthumously, because after all, he would have had to answer for a lot of the lies that he set down on paper in that book. And I think it was called A Witness to History or something like that. I read it once and tossed it because it was absolute nonsense. But again, this is the star witness for the Warren Commission. Without Brennan's identification, and when you realize that the Dallas police had a very complete description of Oswald without anybody actually laying their eyes on him, you begin to have the problems about how is it that they tracked him down so quickly, how is it that they knew he was in places he actually wasn't, and then you have the strange flight from Dealey Plaza with Oswald. So, but other witnesses, you want to talk about other witnesses?
Yeah, we can go into some of the other witnesses.
Sure. Who is of interest to you? I'll let you pick it.
I actually want to go into some of the witnesses who died. I don't have any specific names, but if you want to go into that, or do you want to save that for a show specifically about the witnesses?
Well, that's a whole weird sort of thing, because it's become entangled over the years. There was a researcher who actually ran a small newspaper in Midlothian, Texas, named Penn Jones Jr., and for those who listen to UCY, he was also friendly with Mae Brussel. Wrote a 4-part series of books called Forgive My Grief, and actually did some interesting work on the assassination right there on the ground during the time of the Warren Commission, etc., etc. You can also see him in Mark Lane's Rush to Judgment movie. Penn Jones really was the guy who started the whole convenient deaths list. And, some of this stuff is very strange. I mean, there is a guy named, Simmons, who was shot in the head pretty much after he had given some testimony that wasn't much appreciated. He was warned. There's been a lot of guys who were actually threatened and bullied and marginalized and everything else. A most interesting kind of thing here, though, as far as witnesses and how they were handled by the government, is a guy who only died very recently, and that was James Tague. James Tague was actually, if you look him up, you'll find that he was the third wounded man that day, because he was struck in the face by either, and nobody's ever been able to quite figure this one out, whether it was a bullet fragment or it was a piece of cement after a bullet strike very near where he was standing. Now, where Tague was standing was right by that triple underpass. As a matter of fact, he was under it at that time, and he ended up with a bit of a blood streak on his face. Let's see. He ended up with a bit of a blood streak on his face, which is most famously photographed. But he also ended up being the guy who wound up making them have to settle on that single bullet theory. Because obviously, if a bullet had struck near the curb that far away, it completely missed the vehicle. And therefore, if Oswald only fired 3 shots as they contended, then that means that you only have 2 bullets now remaining to have made 7 wounds between Connolly and Kennedy. So, that actually was something the government was not willing to admit to until Tague did a interview with a local newspaper, and they actually challenged him on it. They tried to sort of bully him out of his explanation about having been struck by something. And even when he went to go testify before the Warren Commission, before the official questioning began, they let him know that that he had been down there, that they knew he had been down there, had filmed the curbstone and all these other things. This led to a very public move where the FBI went down and actually literally removed part of the curbstone. And if you check with, let's think about this for a second, Harold Weisberg. Harold Weisberg's work on this was pretty good. He tried to, with a Freedom of Information Act, request the testing results from that curbstone and everything else, which had been magically patched, by the way, before they retrieved it and brought it back to Washington for evidence. Then he requested the plate which they used to do the testing to determine that there was no copper in the curbstone and all this other stuff, because Oswald supposedly had used a copper-jacketed bullet. The FBI then told him, came back to, responded in court, let me just say, to his Freedom of Information Act request by saying that that they had discarded it for space concerns. They, in one of the largest archives of evidence in the world at that time, they didn't have the space for this little plate. So that's awfully fascinating right there. But Tague is an interesting guy, and kind of got a little bit off the track there toward the end of his life. Wound up, I used to speak to him off and on, and I wound up in some pretty bitter discussions with him where he was pretty much screaming at me that Lyndon Johnson had been responsible for the assassination.
Wow.
Based on certain things, and when I challenged his assertions, he got pretty nasty with me. Previous to that, though, he was friendly to me, and he was actually a guy I wanted to bring on UCY. And then when I was actually discussing it with a friend off the air, that very week, he just very suddenly passed away. So I'm actually very sad I didn't bring him to the air. But there were a lot of witnesses in Dealey Plaza. The whole dead witnesses thing, though, leads way out of Dealey Plaza. I mean, there's a lot of dancers and vaguely connected gamblers and people connected to Jack Ruby, a lot of them, who died some very strange sort of deaths. There's also the examples of, like, Rose Cheramy, who, and again, this is still way outside of Dealey Plaza, but previous to the assassination, there was a lady named Rose Cheramy who claimed to have known Jack Ruby, claimed to have been involved in drug running, for Ruby and for other people in Dallas. She was also supposedly a prostitute and a few other things. Definitely somebody that was not of a great reputation, let's just say. But she ends up in the hospital just before the assassination, and she was flipping out and obviously high as a kite, and reporting to the medical staff at this hospital that Kennedy was going to be killed, and this was a couple days before the assassination. But she also claimed that she was in a car with a couple of Cuban guys who were directly involved in it. When Ruby killed Oswald on TV, a state trooper where she was actually in custody of her. She started claiming that Ruby knew Oswald, which is something that we've had a hell of a time proving ever since. But interesting that when Jim Garrison went to go look her up a couple of years later to go try and bring her in as a witness to prove that there was, a lot more going on there, guess what? She was killed by a hit-and-run driver on a, relatively, remote road, and nobody was ever found. She was just found dead there. There were a lot of one-car accidents, though, and hit-and-run drivers when it came to peripheral people. Now, the counter-argument about this, of course, is that when you have people involved in dangerous lifestyles, I mean, drug running, prostitution, etc., they do typically end up with shorter lifespans. So some of them can be discounted that way.
Yeah, but still, those are interesting.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, there's plenty of stuff. I mean, all you got to do is, there are lists that include a whole lot of people. I think Richard Belzer actually did a whole book on it.
Yeah, somebody did a book on it.
Jim Mars mentions it in Crossfire. Like I said, Penn Jones Jr. is the originator of that kind of thing. And he actually not only did those 4 books, but let me get this straight too. He used to do a journal on the assassination, kind of like a continuous look into research and published articles on new findings by independent researchers. And it was a short paper-produced thing called The Continuing Inquiry, which had a lot of interesting stuff in it. I mean, stuff that even would be rare today of interest. Like, for instance, the Oswald photographs that were published of him in Mexico City were all, we can easily find the fake Oswald in Mexico City photographs that the CIA produced. However, the House Select Committee actually got a hold of about 10 more pictures of the same guy, which are supposedly this person claiming to be Oswald in Mexico City just before the assassination. And he actually published all of those, and this was at the time of the House Select Committee in the 70s. So, and I can't even find that complete set on the internet now. Maybe it's out there, maybe I just haven't seen it, but there was definitely some very cool stuff in there. And Penn Jones Jr., although I don't agree with everything he had put together, again, for the 60s and the 70s, he was doing a hell of a job just running an independent newspaper there, the Midlothian Mirror in Texas. That was his newspaper. So.
Yeah, we could do a whole show on just the witnesses.
Oh, yeah. But if you want to get back to Dealey Plaza, though.
Yeah.
If I can interject real quick, and I guess it is in relation to the plaza, and it's a little bit of a rewind, but you did say previously, I believe, that the shot has been recreated. Am I right?
Well, here's the thing. Nobody's ever done it from the plaza. Nobody's ever done it from the 6th floor window. That hasn't been done. What was done was in 1968. Let me see if I got that right in my head. 1968, right. There was a 4-part miniseries done by CBS Television. By that time, Dan Rather's career had taken off because Dan Rather, remember, was the big, was only his career was made on the Kennedy assassination essentially because he was their man in Dallas at the time. So Walter Cronkite was cutting to Dan Rather, who was just a Dallas TV reporter. But anyway, Rather and Cronkite both sitting there, having gone through the Warren Commission's conclusions, and why is it that people don't believe the Warren Commission? Well, it's because of all these crazy conspiracy theories and books. And they went point by point trying to prove that everything that anybody questions about this stuff is nonsense. So one of the things they did, though, was they brought, I can't remember the exact number, but I do believe it was 7 or 8 of the best marksmen that CBS News could find. They put a target on a track so that it was a moving target to simulate the pitch and everything else of where the motorcade was traveling and all that stuff, to give them a moving target, gave them a Mannlicher Carcano, the same type of ammunition that Oswald used, and out of these, marksmen, some of them were military, some of them were police. A former state trooper from Maryland named Howard Donahue. I got to think about this a minute. Howard Donahue actually did just as well as Oswald did under just about the same conditions. However, the man-liquor Carcano that they had, they didn't count it when there were jams. They didn't count it when the weapon did not fire. They gave them more than one attempt, which was, not something that Oswald would have had as practice shots. You're talking about something moving on a target moving on a fixed track, which is not the same as a body, which is also moving around, and you can see in any of the films you want that Kennedy was not completely stationary. And so there's a lot of considerations there. Plus, he's not shooting through a half-closed, dirty window. But
so how valid do you think...
Howard Donahue was the closest one that I know of.
So he was a trained marksman, though. That is what he did, exclusively.
Well, right. But Oswald was a former Marine who had been trained to shoot in the Marines. He wasn't a great shot, though. And you can actually get a hold of his records. They're erratic. When he first joined, he was, somewhere in the middle of he qualified as a sharpshooter at one point, which is not the highest thing that one can get in the Marine Corps. But he barely qualified, even with the rifle at all, later on in his training, and didn't seem to be very proficient with the damn thing. Not to mention the fact that the man-liquor Carcano was an awful weapon, and terribly constructed, not very accurate. I mean, the Italians themselves refer to it, because it's an Italian gun, the Italians themselves referred to it as a humanitarian weapon, because you couldn't hit anything with it. Although I've seen demonstrations with the man-liquor Carcano, and it's a bolt-action rifle and all this other good stuff. It is possible if you have a well-maintained and and if you got lucky enough to get a well-machined version of the rifle, you could probably pull off what they said he did, but not the weapon that he had. You know what I'm saying?
To say that Oswald could have made a shot like that 3 times with all that we know about him is absolutely ridiculous.
Well, that's what I see. Here's something that does shock people when I say this, because most people that believe that there was a conspiracy will not say this, but from a pure physics sort of standpoint, the single bullet theory is plausible if you believe that Kennedy was wounded through the neck. You can line up the trajectory, and it does make it. I don't just take my own judgment on this. Donald Thomas, who wrote the book, trying to think of the name, Hear No Evil. Thank you. Hear No Evil. He's also referenced in JFK assassination literature as D.B. Thomas. He was a statistician, and he's Dr. Donald Thomas, done many presentations on the acoustics evidence and a lot of other things. The single bullet theory is a possibility, but only if you can allow that Kennedy was wounded through the neck, not through the back, which I do not believe. If you adjust the head wound to the cowlick area of the skull, which seems also, again, implausible, then you can line these things up, and you still have the problem of exactly making Connolly turn the way he needs to turn during a very short period of time to line up his wounds to Kennedy's wounds. But theoretically, it's possible. Highly, highly unlikely, because first of all, Oswald wasn't on that 6th floor. The weapon is awful. The scope is, flawed at best. The weapon, if it was assembled in the school book depository, could not have possibly been sighted in. Anybody who understands about assembling a rifle of this type and attempting to shoot it, if you don't sight it in, you're not going to have an accurate weapon. And to score, almost a headshot and a complete miss on the car. Seems kind of crazy to me. But, what do I know, right?
Yeah, you've only been researching this for 25 years.
Something like that, unfortunately.
longer than the Warren Commission.
Well, they had a certain amount of time, and the length of time is kind of irrelevant because they had the full resources of the FBI. Let's not forget that they utilized, Hoover and his people to conduct most of their interviews. Not the testimony that we see in the volumes, but when you go through the exhibits, you'll find that most of the preliminary interviews and the non-testimonial interviews were conducted by FBI agents of all sorts. Plus, there's that, the Gimberling report previous to that, which is hard to find, but I'm sure you could find it somewhere online. It basically gives the Warren Commission's conclusions within, 60 days or so of the assassination, as opposed to that 888-page lie that we got, in September of '64, and then the 26 volumes that followed a couple of weeks later, which are kind of funny because if you read them extensively, you find that they contradict most of the conclusions in the one volume anyway. But back to Dealey Plaza. So as I said previous, I was describing the way the car turns, and so when it actually goes onto Elm Street there, and we have the beginning of, let's just use the Zapruder film, even though I've got to say once again, I have serious questions about how authentic the Zapruder film is. Let's just use it as a point of reference. You see the car coming down Elm, and nothing is wrong with the occupants of the vehicle at first, until, depending on who you listen to, until it approaches that sign. In my opinion, I believe the first shot was fired. The second shot was likely fired while the car was obscured by the Stemmons Freeway sign. And at least the third shot, minimally, the headshot is at frame 313 on the Zapruder film, and you can see that plainly in that spray for one frame that comes out of Kennedy's head. Now, because of other things that are in the plaza that day, even though it's not part of the accepted canon of evidence by the Warren Commission and even by the House Select Committee, there is plenty of testimonial to say that there were other bullet strikes. Stavis Ellis was a police officer who witnessed bullet strikes on the pavement, previous to any of the occupants in the car having been hit. There was at least a husband and wife who witnessed, and there's a whole famous incident here, which you can see pictures of Buddy Walters, who was a deputy sheriff in Dallas, standing next to another gentleman who is in a suit, who is apparently picking up a bullet off of the ground. That is on the opposite side of the street from where Zapruder's vantage point is, over by the manhole. There's more than one witness that claims the dirt was disrupted by a bullet strike there, and possibly even the cement on the manhole cover had been struck. A guy named Mark Oakes actually tracked down a couple of the police officers in the early 90s and videotaped them discussing the fact that there had been a bullet strike over there. But if you add that bullet strike along with the take strike, along with the minimum of 2 hits that you see, in Kennedy's car, the shooting up of sparks, the strike on the asphalt, and all this other stuff, where actually asphalt was displaced, according to Mr. Ellis when I spoke to him. You'll find that there's a whole lot more than 3 shots, and the 3 shells that they find in the school book depository are suspect themselves. So, those who say there's no evidence of any other bullets other than what came from the Oswald gun, first of all, there's a big challenge as to whether that's Oswald's gun, and secondly, there's plenty of evidence for plenty of other rounds being fired elsewhere. So the TAG strike, the 2 in the car, the 1 on the manhole cover, and at the least one that struck the that struck the asphalt in something like 8 or 9 seconds, gives us now 5 shots in 9 seconds as opposed to the 3 shots in 6 point whatever seconds. Guess what? I don't think that that bolt-action rifle, whether he used the iron sights, which is the Bugliosi conclusion, and which was the conclusion of G. Robert Blakey, who wound up heading the last part of the House Select Committee on Assassinations, that Oswald must have used the iron sights, not the scope, so therefore the scope is irrelevant, but it's still in the way on the damn gun. Let's not forget that. So here's the deal. The shooting then becomes impossible if you can accept that there was at least those 5 shots. Of course, according to the official explanation, there are three cartridges on the 6th floor of the school book depository. Therefore, there were 3 shots fired. However, the condition of one of those cartridges also leads one to believe that perhaps it was the type of thing that was being dry fired in the weapon, and that if it was brought to the school book depository that day, if it was in that rifle, was probably not a complete round when it was ejected from the rifle to begin with. But another story for another day. So, other questions about Dealey Plaza?
Not really any other questions about Dealey Plaza. Did we go into Oswald's how he was arrested immediately? Did we go into that on the show about Oswald?
I think I did, but I mean it's worth covering real quick. The official story is that Oswald, and of course the people that are Oswald did it related, they always tell you that he was the only guy who was missing from the roll call that they took at the school book depository of employees. That's a bunch of bull, first of all. The guy left, and even during questioning, according to more than one police account, although we don't have very many written records, no stenographer, no recording, outside of the postmaster there, who also doubled as an FBI agent, Mr. Holmes, his notes are the only ones that are, anywhere near complete on the interrogation, and that was from one section of the interrogation, but I digress. According to the official story, Oswald goes out the front door of the school book depository rather casually after having been confronted by Marion Baker, who, is the police officer who within 90 seconds of the shooting was on the 2nd floor, pointing a gun at him and asking, Mr. Truly, who was the boss there at the school book depository, does this man work here? And Mr. Truly says yes, so Marion Baker moves on. Interesting little side note to that is that if you ever got a chance to talk to Marion Baker, which I did, you would get some funny stuff out of him, like, look, if I knew that SOB was going to cause us this much problem, I would have shot him right then and there. But, because Oswald did cause him quite a headache by getting killed like that in front of 70 police officers in the basement and everything, right? Anyhow.
Was Marion Baker there during that?
No, he's the motorcycle officer who jumped off his motorcycle, and you can see him actually running into the school book depository on a piece of film. Ooh, see, here's where I'm going to forget.
Oh, no, I mean during Oswald's death.
No, I don't believe he was in the basement at that time.
Okay. I didn't know if Baker might have ended up being there.
No, a lot of people don't realize there was approximately 1,000 people employed by the Dallas PD at the time. So there's a lot of people that you could that were there, and a lot of interesting people that were there. A guy named Larry Sneed actually put together a pretty good book, having spoken to more Dallas police officers than any other researcher I've ever known for certain. I think he's over 200 or 300 of them that he spoke to. And the name of the book is No More Silence. If you can find it, it's pretty good. A lot of their accounts contradict each other, as you would expect, but he was just taking down verbal histories from these guys. So anyway, Oswald goes out the front door of the school book depository, walks a couple of blocks, and grabs himself a bus. Okay, now the bus then gets stuck in traffic, so he gets off the bus, oddly asking for a transfer, which they found in his pocket. Okay, supposedly when he was arrested. He then walks a couple of blocks and goes to catch a cab. Of course, he actually offers it to an older lady who was there first at one of these cab stands. Then takes a cab to his rooming house, but not directly to his rooming house. A couple of blocks past his rooming house, pays the guy, walks back to his rooming house. At this point, he supposedly gets his 38, and which is a whole other weird issue, and a jacket, and walks out of his rooming house pretty much, a few minutes later, and makes his way down to the Texas Theater. On his way to the Texas Theater, though, this is when the official story claims that Officer J.D. Tippit decided to stop him based on the description, which had been flashed out, like I told you about with Howard Brennan earlier. That description went out pretty quickly, like within 10 minutes. So within 45 minutes or so, I believe the timeline I might be a little bit off on, because the official story and what I know are two different things. So I'm going with the official story to tell you how ludicrous it is. Within 45 minutes, he decides to gun down J.D. Tippit, who gets out of his car after pulling up alongside of him where he's walking on the street. And the officer doesn't even make it around the front of his car to the sidewalk when Oswald guns him down. Oswald then makes his way down to the Texas Theater, goes in without paying for his ticket, even though he has money in his pocket. And a shoe salesman that happened to notice him walking down the street and saw him go into the theater without paying for his ticket calls the police, or actually makes the ticket taker call the police. Because this guy had, didn't buy a ticket, and of course, I don't know, at least half a dozen police cars, FBI agents, the press, and a huge crowd gather outside of the Texas Theater, and within an hour and 20 or so of the shooting, Oswald is unceremoniously yanked out of the front, screaming that he's not resisting arrest, and pretty much with the police having to protect him from the crowd, which is now gathered around, I think because a police officer had been killed, and maybe they were pretty angry about that. That's why they jumped on him like that. But I do find it amazing that there were FBI agents, press, and there's actually photographs. There's actually photographs and film of Oswald being yanked out of the front of that theater. If you find the pictures, you'll notice on the marquee one of the movies playing is War is Hell. But anyway, this is Oswald's quick arrest, and pretty damn good detective work as far as I'm concerned from the Dallas PD, because after all, they have a double homicide guy in custody, in less than an hour from one and in less than 2 hours from the other. And
one of them is the president.
And pretty good work considering they let him slip out of the school book depository out of the front door the first time. So hey. Yeah, there's a whole lot of holes in that.
Do you think? I think I asked you this on the last show, but do you think Lee Harvey Oswald killed J.D. Tippit?
It's hard to say. I don't think so. There's a lot of weird stuff that goes on there. Again, from the Dallas police, radio recordings, they identify that they found automatic shells. Okay, revolver shells and all, they're clearly different on the 38.
How do you think he died then?
Oh, it's quite provable that somebody shot J.D. Tippit. That's for sure.
Right, but do we have any idea who?
See, I don't know. I've heard a lot of things postulated about this, and to be honest with you, with the poor way that the evidence has been handled regarding the entire case, it's hard to say. It is possible, however, in my mind, that Oswald could have killed him because Oswald might have known that he was in trouble. There's a whole weird sort of thing about J.D. Tippit, and I hesitate to point to a lot of it because I haven't done the work myself. So there's a lot of possibilities regarding the Tippit murder. A lot. So, it's one of those things I don't like to give a definitive answer on. My opinion is that he didn't kill anybody, but at least not that day. And, they also tried to hang the attempted assassination of General Walker on him, which, according to Walker's own words, the bullet that he dug out of the wall there in his den was not a Mannlicher Carcano bullet. Not at all.
They really wanted to get Oswald.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and they only hung the Walker thing on him, after post-assassination, mind you. And it was kind of utilized to show that he was, somebody was looking to make a name for himself as an assassin, and all that kind of good stuff.
He wouldn't need to kill a general if he wanted to make a name for himself. He shot the president.
Well, yeah, but General Walker at that time was an outspoken kind of right-wing guy who, let me see how I can put this. Edwin Walker, to put him in his proper historical context, you can find stuff about him online, and you can get an idea of what type of figure he was. He was definitely like a John Birch Society guy, who Oswald, having been, at the very least appearing to be left-leaning, or, a communist sympathizer, or a Fidel Castro sympathizer, as he was portrayed in the public, and as he did himself, actually, by appearing on WDSU radio and I believe television in New Orleans during that summer, after being arrested in a scuffle with anti-Castro Cubans on the streets in New Orleans, right outside of the International Trade Mart, which was headed by Clay Shaw. But anyway, he was handing out pro-Castro literature in a city like New Orleans, which was pretty interesting. And he got into a scuffle with some anti-Castro Cubans. Everybody went to court, and he was the only one who was fined $10 for disturbing the peace or whatever it was he was charged with. And that led to an article in the paper and the appearances on Ed Butler's, he had a show about South and Central American affairs, Latin Listening Post it was called, that's it. So he appeared on there by himself, and then he appeared with the guy he was in the scuffle with on the street on a radio show called Conversation Carte Blanche, with Ed Butler again, and the host, William Stuckey also is involved in these broadcasts. But the funny thing is, of course, that both of them were involved in stuff that was being funded by the CIA and all that other stuff we find out later on, which is pretty funny. But he goes on the show, on that show Conversation Carte Blanche with Carlos Berenguer, who was the the guy at the front line of the people that were involved in the scuffle with him in the streets there. So, professing that he is not a communist, but he is a Marxist-Leninist, believes that Fidel Castro should be able to determine how the future of his nation should go, and etc. etc. Kind of poorly. The only intelligent thing that was said during all that was that, and of course, he when he's explaining his time in Russia, he makes a little slip of the tongue during one of those programs, and says that he was under the protection of the U.S. State Department, and then quickly corrects himself and says, "Well, that is to say, I was not under the protection of the State Department." When the Warren Commission published the transcript of that broadcast, not realizing that all of us would be able to get a copy of that years later, they totally omitted the fact that he at first said that he was, under the protection of the, the U.S. Embassy, the U.S. State Department, et cetera, et cetera. Which, of course, they have wound up loaning him the money to come back from the USSR, which was another weird thing. But anyway, so that my opinion on Oswald, though, with the J.D. Tippit thing is that some more work needs to be done there. There's some suspicious behavior by Tippit previous to his death, and all that stuff. And it could be that Tippit was just an innocent cop in the wrong place at the wrong time. But other people had postulated that maybe Tippit was supposed to arrest Oswald, or maybe Tippit was supposed to kill Oswald, et cetera, et cetera. I have to say that I don't have a great opinion on that. I just vaguely sort of believe that he didn't do it. But I haven't done enough work on it personally to make a really good, solid statement.
Well, no, it's not as important as the Kennedy assassination, though.
Well, yeah, it isn't as important, let's just say, but it is pretty important. Because, and here's the weird thing to me, and I don't know why nobody ever brings this up, but, okay, first of all, there's a problem, but according to the official story, let's just not even get into my problems with it. He orders, this cheap .38 and this cheap World War II surplus, Italian rifle from Klein Sporting Goods, please, I don't even want to get into the whole delivery of it and everything else, because at one point we have Railway Express delivering to a post office box, which is like UPS trying to deliver to a post office box, which is impossible. But anyway, leaving that aside, not to mention the violation of all sorts of postal regulations with the delivery of firearms, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Here's the thing, though. Let's just assume that both of these weapons were his. There are two major issues I have with this. First of all, if he had planned to do what they say he planned to do with the rifle that day, why wouldn't you bring the .38 with you? You'd have to imagine that you might be quickly swarmed or somebody might try to stop you, and if you were planning on making an escape, you might want to try to have a weapon on you that you could shoot your way out of in a tight space. And the Mannlicher Carcano was not the weapon for that. The .38 would have been the weapon for that. So he doesn't have his sidearm with him. The other problem is the FBI, try as they might, and the Warren Commission and other government assets, the district attorney of Dallas, everybody tried to prove that Oswald had purchased or owned more ammunition. Guess what? There is no other ammunition. There's no extra. Now, there's only what was left in the clip, in the Mannlicher Carcano, and a few rounds that were loose, supposedly, in Oswald's pocket. And meanwhile, there's conflicting reports about who actually took possession of the rounds. They're from two different companies. There's, different casings that don't quite...
Hard enough to at least think of that, honestly. It's a little sad if you can.
Yeah, and I lost UCY for a minute. My point here was that he didn't take the .38 with him. He didn't have a weapon to shoot his way out if he was caught or discovered. It just seems like poor planning, but also the FBI, the Warren Commission, the local police, the district attorney, nobody could prove that he owned even another box of ammo or even any more rounds. Even among all of his personal effects, that they took out of Ruth Payne's garage, that they took out of the rooming house, that they found elsewhere. Nobody finds extra rounds except for a couple of .38 rounds, which were in his pocket. So he had no extra rounds for the rifle, and hardly anything besides maybe one reload for the .38. So, somebody explain that to me again. Like I said, I repeated that because I think that Skype accidentally dropped UCY for a minute and then brought it back.
Your call's getting staticky.
Oh, great. Well, I'm trying here, folks. I don't know what to say. It's like everything's interference. What can I do?
The NSA.
What can I do? Yeah.
On that note, I am also having a little bit of difficulty. I'm going to go ahead and reset my modem. After that, I don't know if you discussed our guest for the second hour, but I have him waiting in the wings. And if you haven't discussed it, so I can bring it up for our listeners, that we're going to have someone that has some experience actually working with the coyotes, or the coyotes, whatever you'd like to prefer to pronounce, in actually bringing in illegal immigrants into the country. So I think it's going to be very interesting to get that aspect of what happens on the inside, because we get such a biased view of it, and I've even seen it from the law enforcement side. So that, and we're going to tie it into some recent events going on, and I think it'll be an interesting second half to follow up. Although it's not really connected to our first half or JFK, but hey, it's the Ochelli effect.
Exactly, and we'll go back.
Never mind. No reset needed. Okay, I think I'm finally working, guys.
Yeah, you're both working now.
Awesome. It looks like everything's all right now. Okay.
Yeah, well, they probably got mad that we were talking about how they were running interference.
Oh,
well,
nice for you.
What can you do? I mean, what? Like, I'm talking about a 50-year-old crime, and they're going to attack me during that. All right, thanks. Hey, let's talk about immigration. Well, we'll get away with that. Like I said on a previous show,
it really did work out that way.
Right. Let's see how long this lasts. Okay. Like I said on a previous show, I wanted to explore this more from the side of the players, because I'm kind of sick of watching what the mainstream is doing with it. So yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to talk to somebody who was intricately involved with the human smuggling side of this, really, which is what a coyote does. Like I said on a previous broadcast, depending on the cultural shift here, they have a couple of different names for it, but when you're talking about people that are coming from south of the border, from Central America, from South America, from Mexico, all of these areas, yeah, this is what they call them. They call them coyotes. And, like you said before, a lot of people pronounce it coyote, but either way, we know what we're talking about. And, it's a hell of a thing. A lot of people think it's very easy to waltz over that border. It is not. There's a lot of risk. There's a lot of strange things that go on. And like I said, I have somebody that I do want to bring on at one point to just sort of describe their journey. But this is going to be a great piece to set that up. Is he ready anytime, Michelle? Or?
Let me go ahead and let him know that we're ready for him. He's going to be calling in on the phones. On that note, we definitely encourage callers. However, we ask that you're always respectful and nice, and if not, we'll hang up on you. But like I said, we would definitely like callers, and I'm going to talk about a little bit of what I've experienced as well, because I did work in law enforcement, and I've handled 911 calls when somebody's calling from the middle of nowhere. They're like, help me, in Spanish, and there's a lot to it that people don't see. So anyways, I think this caller has an interesting aspect, also, having immigrant parents as well. So I think we have a lot to talk about, and it'll be interesting to see it from the other side. Let me go ahead and get that gentleman to call in.
Sure. 718-717-8296. You can join in. I do want to kind of get a little bit of the story from this gentleman first. I don't know what we're calling him or anything, because I don't know if he really wants to identify himself.
Yeah, actually, he said he'd prefer if not, because, it is a little illegal, so...
Right, so what we're discussing here is, I'm just going to kind of let him tell his story there, and I don't know what we should call him, but Yeah, this ought to be interesting, Dylan. I don't know if you want to hang around for this, but
what I'm gonna do, Chuck, if it's okay with you, I'm gonna end this broadcast. Then I'm gonna start another one because I kind of want to keep the JF.
Oh my, hopefully I'm back on. Dear, dear Lord. I'll tell you, every time I get onto something, it gets strange. It was done, the UCY radio. You know what? I was dialed into UCY. It was not showing me any problems, and I thought I was still on. If it wasn't for the chat room telling me it was dead, I wouldn't have known. So I dropped everybody now, and I think I'm back on. All right. Let's try and bring this back. We're going to try and get George and Michelle back in. Dear God. I don't know what it is, man. You know what? It was showing that the call was still connected. I didn't have any sort of interference with it. It wasn't giving me one of those messages. None of that. And we're in the middle of something pretty fascinating here about the coyotes, and I think, it would be of interest to get that side of it because we don't hear that being reported elsewhere. Hopefully these guys will be able to join me in a minute here. Okay, let's try again. Dear God, I really apologize to you guys out there. It has just been one thing after another with this. And there we go. All right. Okay. I do believe I have Michelle back.
Yes, and we're back.
And hopefully I'll have George in a minute. Ay, ay, ay. There we go. Let's see if we can hold it together here. I'm not insane. I'm doing this the right way, and it's still going bad on me. And I'm really not happy because this is something I've been trying to present. Okay. I believe I am on the air again. And the funny thing is, it was not showing me any difficulty with the call a minute ago. Let's see. Alright. Alright, let's just try and find who I gotta find here. See if we can get George and Michelle both. Maybe we can get 20 good minutes out of this somehow. Let's see now. Okay, I just brought Michelle back in.
I can hear you on air. We've got you there.
Okay. Add to group. Okay, now it popped me back in here. Here's the fun part, guys. Let's see. I can't do that. No. All right, here's the fun part. I cannot, for some reason, add into the call. I'm hitting the add button, and it is not allowing me to add in. It's putting the show on hold, but not showing me that it's putting anything on hold. It appears as though the show is still broadcasting. Now, I hope you guys can hear me right now, because it looks perfectly connected to me. Yeah, I've had dead air for a bit. I think I'm back on now. But, yeah, right, because I was totally dead. I don't know why. I keep trying to add into the... I'm talking, yeah. I'm on the air right now. But I can't seem to... I don't know what's going on. All right. Look, I have added people into calls before. I've been doing this for a bit, and you know what? This is not the way it's supposed to go. Let's see what I can do here. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. That's alright. It's not an excuse, though. Telling you, it just keeps... I'm just hitting the add, and then it looks fine, and then it goes. Alright, well, I don't understand. This is just ridiculous. Okay. Let us attempt one more time. Let's see if I can take a call. Now, adding to group call. And both appear to be on.
All right.
Now, I don't have Michelle back, but let's see what this says now. Let's see where we are. Okay. Telling you, this is like crazy as crazy can get. Let's see now. Alright, now. What do you have? No, just finish up. Okay. Well, let's see now. Alright, I hope you guys are hearing me. Let's continue on with the discussion, and hopefully they get it.
Alright, I'll dive right into it. I mean, I think where we left off on was the... I guess I was trying to describe to you, you know, during the journey, there's like a story within the story, if you will. And when we rendezvous on that side of the border, usually we meet at night. It's all scheduled. The schedule is based upon the shift work of the Border Patrol. So we try to time everything to where when the shift change is happening, everything's going on. You see what I'm saying? So we usually meet them. I noticed we met them at night, so we have them in the hotel. You know, feed them, make sure they're all good to go, make sure all the money's in. You know, for everyone, which is usually goes. All the coyotes are different, I guess, depending on the level of experience. You know, if he's experienced or he's well known to complete the job, it's usually going to be $2,000 plus per person in that area. But anyways, so amongst the group, what happens is a leader emerges, and the reason being is because at a certain point, the group will have to be alone with no coyote, the way he does it. They're going to be alone with no coyote, no associate, no helper. The group will travel alone at a certain point in the process. So
right. So this is the point at which I hear about where these guys end up walking in a line, right? Where basically there's one guy up front, that's your leader, and everybody else is just told follow the guy in front of you kind of deal, where they make the long walks, right?
Yeah. If this is you're right, but if we're fast forwarding in the process, the way he does it, the way we did it, there's not a lot of walking involved whatsoever, actually. because we're using South Padre Island. We're using the beach, and the way it's coordinated. There's actually not a lot of walking in this method, believe it or not. It's very minimal, very minimal actually. It's more of they actually spend more time. I would say they spend more time in the vehicles, way more time in vehicles than actually walking the way he does it. So it's really mobile process the way he does it. Because if they're walking and they're walking for a long time, they're exposed. They can be exposed. So amongst the group, leader emerges. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of people heading in the same city. They just out of survival or whatever. Actually, believe it or not, couples emerge. People who weren't a couple entering into it, just all of a sudden become a couple, and then they can rely on each other to survive when they're in America, if they're heading to the same place.
Well, right. I mean, groups kind of emerge because, after all, they're all in the same situation, and the only person that they have is who they have around them. And there's a lot of risk. There's a lot of risk here. Excuse me. And that's something that I think is missed a lot of times, is that people don't realize the amount of risk. I mean, a lot of these guys wind up dead, like you were talking about earlier. I don't know if it made it to air, but we were talking about the heat exhaustion, the difficulties in just the travel. I mean, you were talking about how sometimes people are in compartments and they're hidden. But they could suffocate in there and all that. But there's also, now I'm not saying that you had anything to do with any of what I'm about to say or anything, or that your guy had anything to do with it, George, but here's the thing. There are also guys who end up dumping these people off in places where they know they're not going to survive, and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, there's all sorts of different ways that these people can lose their lives, get injured, and everything else. And I think that what a lot of people that make these very quick, crass statements about, illegal immigrants automatically do is they don't take into account the fact that this is being done out of desperation. Generally, it's not a matter of, gee, I just want to change the scenery, so let me get out of, let me get out of where I'm at because I want to go pick vegetables,
Yeah, exactly. No, you're exactly right. This is not a move for luxury's sake. This is out of need, absolute pure need. And when I was going to college for a little bit, I had an assignment that I had to interview someone regarding this issue. So I interviewed my dad, and I was telling you earlier, I don't know if it got on air, but one of the things that I asked him, just a series of questions that I had for him, one of them was, why did you do it? Why did you cross over illegally? Why? And his answer was very simple, but so purely true, and it's just out of necessity. Period. It's a necessity.
Yeah.
And it's so true, And to get as far as the way we did it. The reason why I agreed to do it in the first place was for the money, the quick cash. That's the quick cash, the nobility factor, and I know a lot of people will not grasp that at all whatsoever. But there is, in my opinion, there's some, especially if you do it right and do it humanely. In my opinion, there's nobility in helping your people out, helping families out. And so forth. And if I'm making money and helping people out at the same time, that's in my opinion, there's a little bit of nobility there. And I guess I did it at the time I was younger, and I guess I did it for the experience that it'd be cool, and so forth. So I learned a lot. But the reason why I agreed to do it, because I'm not much of a risk taker in a sense. And I go, when I was asked, the first thing that came out of my mind, no way, I don't want to be in a vehicle with I don't want to be in a vehicle with a truck full of illegal aliens and this and that. People. Well, actually, the way we did it, at no point did I actually have illegal aliens in the truck. Basically, we were used as movers of the vehicles. He had people that would actually drive the truck with the immigrants in it, okay, and he had people that just to move it along with him as well. So I guess, and of course, everything because we're going to be on a beach, and we're not going where most of the population is on the beach recreation. We're going deep to what's called the 50th mile. We're going deep inside probably the most remote part of the beach. And to go there, you have to have a lift kit on your vehicles. At one point, I drove an old Bronco lifted, of course, 4x4, and one time I drove a Suburban lifted, if you can imagine that, 4x4. So, and then once you're there, it's so remote. The sand is untouched. I mean, picture like a Silverado commercial when they were like off-roading. That's the way it was, literally. So we take the vehicles. He has his primary vehicle. In his primary vehicle, he has a helper. I'm following him, and they first of all, they have a rendezvous point as soon as they cross the border. As soon as they cross the river, we're picking them up right there. There's no walking. Boom. As soon as they get on U.S. land, boom, they're going right into the Suburban and whatnot. So basically, I move it to a spot, then I switch vehicles because, of course, the main coyote, he's not going to literally do it. He's going to hire other people, so his risk factor is way down.
Right.
So he himself is also never have the people in the vehicle. So once I put the vehicle in position to where it needs to be by the border, I go with him, and then the helper gets the vehicle, the primary vehicle, the carrying vehicle, and then he takes it along the border. They get in, and I mean, they get in fast with like lightning quick. They load up the vehicle, and then we're off to the races. Then I'm with the main guy. We go to the beach. Now, this is the interesting part. We go to the beach. Why South Padre Island? So we go. So, well, first of all, let's rewind a little bit. When you're crossing the border into the United States, because I have no illegal, we're going to pick them up on the other side. Okay, they search my vehicle. I have nothing to worry about, right? I don't have nothing on me. I don't have no illegal hits. I'm just driving the vehicle.
Right.
So when we get to the beach, we go all the way to the 50. We go on the other side, pick them up, and then we transport them to the beach. We go all the way to the last part of the beach. Why are we going there? Why is that spot? Because at the very end of South Padre Island, guess what's right across the canal? Padre Island. So at that point, they get an inflatable boat. This is where the leader part, this is the part where they're going to be alone. They get an inflatable boat. They have paddles. They have everything. And then they go across the canal, and then they wind up on the last mile of Padre Island. So now we got to get out of South Padre Island, cross the checkpoint, and guess what? You're crossing the checkpoint with no one in your truck. Okay? So if they search, there's no. Yeah, go ahead. You want to search? Go ahead. I'm just driving.
So let me get this straight. What you guys are doing there is basically dropping them off, putting them in a boat, so that when you go hit a checkpoint with your vehicle, there's nobody with you. They get to rejoin you on the other side of the checkpoint.
Exactly. So now, when we drop them off, now we're headed our next destination. We cross the checkpoint. We're clean. Now we're headed towards Corpus Christi to Padre Island. We're going to enter Padre Island and go to the very last mile of Padre. If anyone's ever done that, it takes a while. For you to go all the way in, all the way out, it's not as and then at night, so you can't go as fast as you want to go. It takes a long time. This is not 45 minutes in and out. No, it takes a couple of hours. So we go to Corpus Christi, and we're driving to Corpus Christi with nobody. We don't have anyone on us. You see what I'm saying? That's why I agreed to do it, because the risk was so low, and the reward was great. So you drive to Corpus Christi, you go to Padre Island, you go to the last mile, and guess who's meeting you there, who just crossed over from South Padre Island on the boat? Them. And of course, this is the riskiest part, because although I'm not carrying them, I'm amongst them. at that point. See what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm within the group with the Ron. That's the only thing I didn't like when we met up, when we were at the last mile, when we finally got there. It was kind of like a cheerful mood, you know. It was like, and I'm over here like paranoid. I'm like, this is my first time. I was like, hey man, like the job's not over. Like, can we stop talking and celebrating? It was kind of a celebratory mood. Like, you know, we did like, hey, can y'all get in? You know, let's get out. You know, let's go. I was like, let's go. I was waiting. Everyone was like nonchalant. Especially like Coyote, because he's done it so many times. He started doing this when he was like 16 years old. First, he started doing it small time, just helping people. Hey, this part of the river, there's no patrol here. Let me show you the way. Pay me, and I'll show you where to cross. You can cross by yourself at your own risk. You're gonna walk right into their lap. But let me show you where you can go, where there's no one in your way. And see, that's how we started off.
How long did you do this for?
Not long at all. Not long at all. One of my family members continued to help him out. One of my I won't say who, but one of my very close family members continued to help him out for a while. I only did like 3 runs with him, but even when I wasn't helping him, I always saw him around because he was good friends of the family. And he still is. Actually, he grew up in the same place that one of my, again, I mean, I don't want to reveal who he grew up with, but one of my close family members, they grew up together.
Yeah,
in the same neighborhood.
Yeah, that's okay. We don't want to get into identifying who's who or anything like that.
Right.
In general, I'm just trying to get a handle on the experience, because and like you said, it's not just a matter of immigrants from one particular area. Like I mentioned before I had you on, I said that when you come from certain parts of the world, they call them snakeheads. They call them all different types of things. But these guys, from everywhere, there have been individuals who have helped to facilitate people coming into this country without documentation. Let's just say. There was plenty of Italians that came through the Montreal corridor. I know all about that. That was a different kind of journey. There were others that came across, from places on ships that were, and still they're doing it today. There's all different ways that this is done. But it's just the fact that this is really coming up now. I mean, what do you think of when you see, because you've seen this stuff getting covered lately, right? About the kids.
It's always politicized. It's always politicized. Especially during primary season, main election. It's politicized, but they politicize it in the sense just to gain votes. In my opinion, I haven't really seen any true action. Something that makes a difference in the ease of being able to become legal. You can become legal now, but it takes not only does it take money, it takes a lot of time. There's so much red tape. I always see these. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I'm an independent. But the most people that I see complain all the time are the conservative Republicans who say, "Why don't you just become legal, like just the normal way, and we'll accept you?" Well, yeah, but here's the thing: this is time sensitive. They can't wait for the red tape while their 6-year-old son or their newborn or whatever is starving. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to, and at the end, no matter what argument is thrown my way, if I tell you, put yourself in their shoes, just simply do that. Put yourself in their shoes. Forget about the laws. Forget about the borders. Put yourself in their shoes. What would you do? What would you do? You're gonna tell your wife, hey, hey, honey, we got to wait for due process, so if you can not be hungry and, stuff like that. It's just not realistic.
No, of course not. You're going to go out and you're going to try to make a living somehow. You're going to try and bring something home, to keep a roof over the heads of your kids, your wife, whoever it is that you got to take care of. That's what you're going to do if you're a decent person and you have a family. But even people that are here all by themselves, they got to feed themselves. They got to do it somehow, and Yeah, no, absolutely. That's part of the thing. But I was curious because I talked to a couple of people from Guatemala, from Mexico, and from a couple other areas, and they had a kind of a strange spin on this recent news coverage, and it didn't make much sense to me that they were saying that they're pretty much covering these kids that are arriving here now to evoke sympathy from the public. And I'm saying to myself, yeah, but for what? I mean, do you have...
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about here? I mean, there's
Right.
that kind of odd sentiment, it seems to me. I mean, I haven't had a great sample.
Are you talking about like the kids that are coming over all alone? Is what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Are you talking about the anchor babies, or what do you?
No, not the anchor babies. Anchor babies are a whole other thing. But I mean, the fact that this recent coverage where we got people that are just showing up and they're mostly children or they're mothers and
Right.
children. Yeah.
Right. Well, they get, there's so many scenarios that just people are not aware of that happens, negative and positive. I mean, it's negative and positive. There's some parents that just, like for example, in El Salvador, they'll put their kids in, hey, just make it over there, send money back, and they don't even care about their kids. They just want the money and this stuff. There's always a negative side, as well as positive stories, but. They grow up quick. I always hear adults here that, hey, kids here in America, they grow up quick. Well, you know what? Over there, they grow up even faster. And it's and that's why the cartels, too, they have an abundant of recruits because, if you can't make it over here, hey, you know what, come with us. If you can't make it over there in America, you're having trouble or whatever, come with us. We'll just provide for you and this and that. And, there's so many angles as far as the kids coming over here. I think the media will just hop onto anything that, they're saying is if it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah.
So, whatever they can sensationalize for their ratings and their corporate sponsors and so forth, they'll run with that. They'll beat it. They'll talk about it during primary season and so forth like that, because you hear the candidates talking about it. But it's definitely some true reform is needed. In my opinion.
Yeah. No. I mean. To me, it's not the easy answer here. There's no way that that's going to come about because of the complexity of the situation. I'm not sure what to make of it, though, honestly, because it's like it just seems to me as though there's this influx now, and it's mind bending to me.
Right.
It's also amazing to me, though, that people never do take into account the fact that. That there is a need for somebody to come here. This is not something that they did just, like I said before, it's not like, gee, I just need a change of scenery.
It's tough, man. I'll tell you, for an example, you look at the people who come from Honduras, they have, you were talking about the nicknames earlier, they have nicknames for like Mexicans, when they come over, the slang term or the term they'll use is, oh, that you're a wetback and this and that. Well, people who come from Honduras, they have to cross the border to El Salvador. They have to go through Mexico, then the U.S. So they call them what's called tres veces mojado, which means 3 times wet. You're a 3-time wetback. So even amongst themselves, even amongst the groups, let me tell you, you'd be surprised what happens. I mean, like I said, there's positive things. You have stories of people coming to America and becoming, top of the class, in their high school and then eventually college, and they come, they end up being and then there's negative stories. There's rape amongst the group sometimes. There's the people, stuff like that. I feel sorry for all the people that have to cross through the desert. I mean, that's just brutal.
Yeah, well, that was one of the stories that I got a couple of times about the cross through the desert and actually just walking on foot through the desert in Arizona. Man, that's just brutality. And
since they're very uneducated, there's a lot of ignorance that they just don't know. They're not educated. They don't know the walk they have ahead of them. Especially if you're doing it on foot thing. One of my clients, I used to sell furniture, and one of my clients was a Border Patrol agent. Now I'll tell you this is just me. And I've crossed the border, the checkpoints. I've gone to Mexico. I love going over there. It's a very beautiful country. It's just really corrupt, disorganized, and so forth. But I love it. Every time, in my opinion, every time I see a Hispanic Border Patrol agent, to me that's an oxymoron. That just doesn't make sense to me. Why would you? Now, if a Hispanic tells me, hey, you know what, I want to be a Border Patrol agent to stop the flow of drugs coming into America. I want to stop cocaine. I want to stop methamphetamine and, heroin and this and that. Hey, I support that all the way. So that doesn't wind up on the streets, the kids, and, getting people addicted, and the addiction breaks up the family and so forth. I understand all that. But for those Hispanics, it's disgusting to me. If you're there, if your goal is, hey, I want to be a Border Patrol agent so I can stop my people from prospering, that's disgusting to me, and it's disgraceful.
Well, I hear that, but you know what? I kind of, again, I try and look at as many different angles as I can, and I think some of those guys that do that want to be there to kind of, because they can relate to the people, they think, or they can speak the language.
Yeah, they're very horrible. They're very horrible because they speak the language. Yeah, they're but it doesn't just because you speak Spanish, to me, it doesn't mean anything. If you're there, and you should see, I've seen the faces of these people when they actually get caught. The men look like someone just died, and the women, they're just sobbing, crying.
Well, because they just lost a huge investment. Because generally, I mean, you're talking a couple of grand at least, which is not easy to come by here. Forget about down there. You're talking about a couple $1,000s. In places where that's almost impossible to come up with. And, if you get caught and sent back, that money's lost. It's not like you're getting a refund,
Exactly.
So, you're beat, and now you're back down there without the money, or maybe you owe somebody the money that, whatever else. I mean, God knows what the circumstance is, and you're really stuck now. Can you imagine how long it took for them to even save up for that $2,000? Look, $2,000, even in America, $2,000 is a lot. If one of my family members say, "Hey, can I borrow $2,000?" No, you can't. But I don't have. That's a lot of money. You know what I mean? But so if that's a lot here in America, where supposedly we're living good. Imagine over there, $2,000 over there is like $8,000. You know what I mean? It'd be like trying to say, look, just come up with $10,000 by next week, and we'll straighten this all out for you. Most people don't have that in their pockets. Now, George, listen, I'm down to about 5 minutes left, and I know it's been a disaster of a show as far as staying on the air and everything. But look, I can't even bring Michelle back in. But here's the thing. I want to make sure if there's anything else that you want to get across about this, because I'm telling you, this is a topic that I think needs to be examined from more than one angle. And and I'm really glad that you agreed to do this. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
But I want to make sure if there's anything else that you think you didn't hit upon, that you want to get to it. There's only a couple more minutes left, and then my music will jump in, and we'll be done. So please go right ahead.
Well, I appreciate you having me on as well. I guess I'm sure there's some things that I want to touch on. I'll probably forget after off there, but the things that come to mind is that I would say for the people listening that are against these people coming over, I always just put it down to the most primitive sense of just survival. That's the way I look at it. That's the way I look at things. When at the core, this is just survival, man. That's all. This is not, hey, I crossed the border, I gotcha, I stuck it to the man. No, they're not even thinking. But there's no mentality like that. This is like, okay, I'm here. I have, and then even when they cross over, there's not even a guarantee that they're going to make it, that they're going to prosper. They still have they still have to take it in their hands. They still have to run with it as well. So they're at the promised land supposedly, but you still have to make it happen too. And let me tell you, illegal wages under the table, you're not getting paid $7.25 minimum wage. No, you're not. You're probably not, unless you work construction or something. Then you might be above it. But other than that, you're getting paid a daily wage, slave wages. And I just ask people to simply put yourself in their shoes. Period.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I was after here. Is and I'm gonna do more on this. I got to tell you, but it is definitely something that I just see missed all the time. Is that look, you might have your beliefs about how our country's supposed to be. You might have your beliefs about who belongs here and who doesn't. But here's the bottom line, as far as I'm concerned: we're talking about human beings. This isn't a matter of some group of amorphous animals that have nothing to do with you and me. They're still human beings, and all they really want to do is find a better way to survive, find a better way to take care of their families. And it is not the easy path that a lot of people seem to think it is. It's a hell of a thing. You can get killed doing it. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
All right.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was
but I have the files. I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? The brain, the fondle slab of choice, I don't know that was, internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the cartoon comes from, as long as it's real. It doesn't. It's hard to get real information because seriously, they don't want you to have